turning The Legend of Zelda into an arcane style animation in Blender. Surely that can't be that hard, right? Right? Well, ever since I was a kid, I thought that The Legend of Zelda deserved an animated feature. And ever since I saw Arcane, I haven't been able to get this idea out of my head. Just imagine Link, Hyrule and all the monsters on the big screen with the visuals that turned League of Legends into the best animated series of all time. But since Nintendo insists on not letting us have nice things, announcing a live action adaptation instead, I said to myself, Pao, you're a 3D artist, you can fix this. So I decided to make a short Zelda animation in the style of Arcane. The goal? Make it so good that Nintendo is either compelled to make it a full movie or compelled to send me a cease and desist letter. There is only one problem though. I can't animate characters. It's the thing in 3D that I can do. I tried it, I failed, I moved on. Enter the story, Vel, a character animator who's also my neighbor. He and I worked together in the past on a Disney-style animation, and coincidence or not, he shortly after landed a job working at Monsters at Work and the Little Mermaid series, and I landed a job at Disney Animation. Which, by the way, if you're new here, I'm Pao. I'm a lighting and compositing artist, and in this channel I show you how to make beautiful renders on your own. Now, since Vel and I had this history of manifesting things into existence, I would need to recruit him for this plea of mine to Nintendo. Also, for this to succeed, the scene had to be epic. It needed action, magic, and spectacular animation. I decided to adapt the ending of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Spoiler alert, it has everything. Ganondorf, the bad guy, emerges from the ruins of his own castle in his beast form, Ganon. He surrounds Link with fire, but thanks to Zelda blasting some magic, Link gets to deliver the last blow. Yes, it looks crude on Nintendo 64 graphics, but I tried to convince Vel that it would look amazing in film, putting together this crude demo.
When you came to my desk to this, I was like, listen to Pao, he's not crazy, he's a capable guy, but I wanted to explore the idea of like trying to explain a story. But there's one specific thing that I really like, that we could explore another possibility, which was Ganon.
So, if I was to convince him to animate for the project, I would need the film to have a stronger story with more battle with the beast. This time, instead of acting it out myself, I moved to what in 3D animation we call layout, which is just blocking the composition, cameras, and doing some crude animation for the characters. I pitched this. Link is trapped with Ganon inside the fire ring. Ganon swings the sword out of him. Without his sword, Ganon is sure to win. But what was that? The sword is back, and a blast of magic strikes Ganon. It's Zelda, and she incapacitates Ganon for a bit. Link sees the opportunity to grab his sword, and...
Oh my god, I forgot about all this. So, when Pao showed me this piece, like this little piece, I was like, you're crazy, I won't do it. Because it's like 30 seconds, 31 seconds, it was like way too long.
So back to the drawing board it was. To get him to animate, I would need to cut the film from 30 to 15 seconds while retaining all the same story beats. The version that follows would be my last and only hope.
This is kind of closer, yeah. I really like the idea because it was like already cut in half and it already works. We could already start going somewhere with this. Yeah.
Now, with Vel by my side, I was convinced that the animation would be the best it could be. But in the heat of the moment, we failed to see a big issue with our proposal that would turn out to be the first and most costly mistake in the project.
What could give us issues? There's a clear... the magic.
See, neither of us really understood the physics of Zelda's magic in this context. Is it an energy beam? A magical chain? And if we, the creators, don't understand how she's holding him back, the audience definitely won't. If we were in layout and we find an issue that we did not know how to solve, what should have we done?
Solve it in layout!
What did we do?
No, go forwards! Fuck no, we were like, we will solve it at some point! Go forward!
Is that a good or a bad idea?
Fuck that!
You'll see later why that was a problem, but let's move forward. Moving forward meant different things for Vel than it did for myself. Vel would start animating, and I would start to build the biggest missing piece, Ganon, the beast. Because if you hadn't realized, this is just a placeholder. You see, in order to animate a character, you need what we call a character rig. Not only it is a 3D model of your character, but it also has bones and controllers so that you can pose it however you want. Having a 3D model without a rig is kinda like having a figurine instead of an action man. It's fun to look at, but no good to play with. We were lucky enough to find free character rigs for both Zelda and Link. Thanks a lot, Zoranin442 and K, respectively. But you can't just download a massive ARCANE-style interpretation of Ganon from the internet. I would need to build that from scratch, and since we could go in any direction with it, Vel came to me with a wish list.
I wanted Ganon to be like menacing, to be big, to be heavy, something that will kill you without a doubt. I wanted him to be more like beast relatable than human relatable.
So just for context, up to that point, this was the most complex character I had ever fully rigged. So what Belle was asking would certainly be the most complex character I'd done in my career. For the modeling, I roughly followed the process described in this tutorial by the Blender Studio. Links in the description. It all starts with doing a design in 2D, and then an artistic sculpt to explore the shapes in 3D. Once that is done, you remodel it again with the same shapes, but now with polygons that are cleaner. This is what we call retopology, and it's important to make sure that the character will be able to move and deform correctly later. But how did we make the character look cool and arcane-ish, you ask? I hope? In short, very intentional and graphic shapes. All the design is made with lots of straight lines in contrast with a few clean curves wherever we need it. The decision was made not to do hair with curves, but with meshes instead, which was a topology nightmare, but it forced me to design every single clump of hair with care, following simplified, elegant shapes. We avoided using displacement maps or modeling micro details because to match the ARCANE style, all of that detail needed to be hand painted directly into the textures. Which, yes, I used a mixture of Blender and Krita to hand paint textures not only on Ganon, one of the 3 characters, which received a bit of texture love just to make them feel better inside the project. I'll talk more about why we need these detailed textures in a minute. But last and certainly not least, I roughly followed the workflow defined by the meter from the Blender Studio for rigging using his add-on, Cloud Rig. It was not without difficulty, but the add-on automated a lot of the work ensuring that all the formations, especially the limbs, worked flawlessly. So thanks Demeter, you are awesome. At that point I was feeling great with my creation. I loved that ugly little beast made of ones and zeros as if it was my child, but at some point you have to let your child spread his wings, and in here that meant giving it to Belle so that he could try and animate with it. And he really liked it. He came back to me with this, which I could not believe. I had just rigged Ganon, and to this day I have no idea how he breathed so much life into it. It amazed me that you could feel how heavy he was while keeping him agile and powerful. Also, it was incredible how with the same runtime he was able to add so many details.
Maybe you watch it and you don't realize, but there's so many things going on. Like, since Ganon coming from the left, he has to be menacing. Link is like dragging through the floor. Then he's jumping on top of Link. Link has to do some kicks on Ganon's face. Also, you don't want like some of the claw to distract you on the wrong moment. Right here, I want Ganon to feel like powerful and a beast. So I'm doing this kind of like roar, roar. Clearly, you're looking at the big eyes. You're looking at the eyes on the face. With that, I gain time for the sword to come in. Like, you're paying attention to the center. And now, the sword is coming on. I go from right to left. And now I want you to pay attention to the sword. So, one way of doing it is moving the head of Ganon. Now, where the head of Ganon is? Going that way. Because I want your attention to be here for a second. Where is Link looking? Looking that direction. And then I want you to move on. The sword is on. It's already there. You know that it's there. So, what's gonna happen? We're gonna focus back the attention to Ganon. How do we do this? Basically, a lot of movement on Ganon. Then it catches your eye. That's the storytelling point. The sword came from somewhere. Where does it come from? Something hurt me. What is that? I want to kill that. And then comes the present. Like, yeah, big rock.
And great point. Rocks. Remember how I mentioned that the magic would be an issue? Well, no interpretation of Zelda's magic really felt tactile enough. That was until we connected with our primitive brains and thought, rocks? Everyone understands rocks. We went back to the layout and replaced the chain magic with Zelda levitating rocks to trap Ganon under the rubble. After that, Link would still finish Ganon with a sword. A nice side effect of this new idea is that the set immediately felt more alive. By using the same rocks and debris for the set first and for the animation later, you immediately felt more immersed in the world. That meant, however, that Bell had to reanimate a few things, and it also added a good 3 seconds to the piece. That was a bit more work than he anticipated. That also meant that we would need to work on the project for longer than we expected. Bell wasn't really happy at the time, but I hope he still likes me deep down. But that would also be more work for me. Modeling a rock isn't as difficult as modeling an entire character, but modeling hundreds of different rocks would certainly have taken longer. That's why I decided to take some time instead to build a stylized rock generator. I don't think I have enough time now to explain just how I did it, but let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in a tutorial for this. And while you're down there, hitting the subscribe button is the best way to make sure that you don't miss it when I drop it. Having the stylized rock generator allowed me to do 2 more complex tools: a flying rock clump rig, which Bell would use to animate, and a stylized glyph generator. This last one I would need to build the set, which we've yet to talk about. The set was mainly built using careful box modeling for the most part. For some details, I used this asset pack by Nighttime, which, funnily enough, is the only money I've spent on this project. $15. Now that we had the set, the characters, and the story figured out, Bell could lock himself in the animation dungeon, and I could start the part of the process that excited me the most: effects and rendering. I've grouped effects and rendering because they're all critical to making the ARCANE style. And believe me, it was not easy, but let me try and break down what we did. Disclaimer: all that follows is my humble attempt at reverse engineering what they did on that show. I have no insider info from Fortiche whatsoever. Earlier I said how the characters needed hand-painted textures. Take your standard Pixar or Illumination movies, for example. Your base colors for a skin, for instance, would be quite flat and soft. The way these characters gain interest is through lighting, which creates a lot of soft gradients and shaping on the characters. On ARCANE, we very rarely get a character with 3D gradients on them. Instead, we see a lot of interest painted on the textures themselves. This is so that they can afford to use simpler, flatter shapes to indicate lighting. And when I say simpler, I don't mean easier at all. I mean that they're so carefully designed that no pixel goes to waste. These are part of what makes ARCANE feel so painterly, and I would actually believe it if some of them were actually 2D. However, I wouldn't have time to paint all these light shapes myself, frame by frame, so I built a different workflow. I would render a few light groups separately and then run them through a compositing tool that I built that would transform 3D gradients into 2D simplified shapes. Compositing, in case you don't know, is the animation equivalent of using Photoshop. So to emulate the digitally painted concept art that the ARCANE style is derived from, compositing would be the way to go. You can learn more about compositing in Blender in this video of mine. I would render each part of the frame as if they were different Photoshop layers, and I would stylize them individually. This way I would shape the image in 2D rather than letting the 3D render do it. Let me break down this shot. I roughly build my images from the back to the front, just like if they were Photoshop files. My first layer would be the sky, which I painted in Krita for each shot and projected on a sphere so that it moves with the camera. Then the castle, which doesn't have much stylization. To integrate it with the sky, I used the depth pass to add some fake atmosphere. Next in our path is the Triforce magic, which is just a 2D element with a bunch of blooms and distortions applied. Then, of course, there's Zelda. Here you can see the stylization nodes making a lot of the heavy lifting. For context, this is her with and without the light flattening tools. After that, motion blur and depth of field are added in compositing. Then, we make it extra magical with some 2D particles and a few camera effects to make it more believable. And I said that I bring the effects as flat to the elements, but that's only half true. I had no time, or skill really, to animate the effects frame by frame in 2D, as I suspect they do in ARCANE. Instead, I built procedural shaders on planes that simulated 2D effects for both the fire and the dust. I would render them with just their flat colors, and I would merge them with the 3D in compositing directly. For enhancing the illusion that they were hand-drawn elements, I made it so that they were animated every 2 frames, and I added fake motion blur just so that the motion didn't look choppy. Please let me know if you'd be interested in a fake 2D effects tutorial, and since you're here, leave a like. As per the color design of the piece, I had this early idea of representing the 3 elements of the Triforce, that's Link, Zelda and Ganondorf, as 3 different colors. Red for Ganon, yellow for Zelda, and cyan for Link. These colors would be more or less present in the screen based on who was dominating the battle. And with that, all the main questions for how we would make this little film of ours were solved. But before we could actually see the finished product, we would need to actually finish it. And I must say that finishing took way longer than we expected. We began this project in late 2024, and I'm recording this in early May 2026. That's a year and a half, which, yes, we both had full-time jobs in the meantime, which slows the process, but the real reason why it took so long is that the answer we found to how to make things look arcane was to make everything by hand. And making everything by hand looks very nice, but it takes very long. But after a big push from both Bella and myself, and having destroyed my voice dubbing Ganon, here's the finished piece. Well, that was a lot. So let's break it down, shall we?
Sure, let's go.
So this first shot was a last minute addition. We just wanted for the piece not to start so abruptly. And it is actually just a painting projected onto 3D planes and just some FX to make it feel more alive. What we did here was to do some flashes at the end and have it connect with the next shot.
Actually, one of the hardest parts of animation was like connecting the whole piece together, moving the cameras, and hooking up the shots.
Yeah, for instance here, the camera starts moving downwards on this shot and continues to move downwards on the next one. And this is what makes it feel so organic, and you did a great job on that, I think.
So now here in the shot I wanted you to look at Ganon. So one of the movements I did with the camera is like moving the camera up and down with the jumps. Also when Ganon jumps on top of Link, he gains like a bigger shadow. He has like a bigger silhouette than Link. Yeah, exactly like that. So it makes him feel powerful.
Another thing that I made here, just so you could read Ganon, was to paint a bright patch of sky behind him, so that you could really read his silhouette. Dark over light.
Cool.
And then
the rocks come from screen right to left, and that's to hook up the next shot.
Yeah, you did a great job here. Rocks moving screen left here and screen left here. Yeah, that's what makes the cut so flawless. Now I have a flash here, a flash of light, just to reveal Zelda and also to try and extinguish the fire. The smoke here conveys the sense of wind. And also I have this reaction on the volume just so that you could read the silhouettes clearly, dark over bright. The same with Link.
Now what I wanted you to look is at Zelda. So one way of doing it was like moving the Triforce behind Zelda a little bit so you focus on her. Also all the shapes of the rocks moving around her, yeah, helps you focus on her because she is the main focus at this point.
Yeah, and here the Triforce just flashes and becomes kind of a white, bright wall behind her so that she can completely read dark over light. This way you keep focusing on her, which is what we want.
Now we want to focus on the tower. So what I did is like move Zelda before the camera and she's like going to grab the tower.
Yeah, and she's kind of pointing there. She did a great job with. I also tried to paint like a patch of bright sky behind the tower so that you would focus on the silhouette, which was a bit difficult.
Well, now Zelda is gonna push the rock towards the left because it's gonna hook up with the next shot. And in this shot, the tower actually goes from behind Ganon, which is hard to read, towards the screen right, because we need to hook up the previous shot with this one. So it was a tiny bit tricky, but we did some magic here that makes it work.
And also the rock coming in front of the camera really helps tie in this transition. And I'm also really proud of this smoke elements that are 2D that I think really make the scene feel natural.
Yeah.
In here, Ganon is just a dark mass, and Link is the most contrasted area of the shot, and that's why we focus on him. I really like what you did with the camera here. Honestly, I couldn't figure it out on layout, and you did amazing how you can track the hand, and now you look at the face. flawless.
Yeah, actually, to make the movement work, I had to animate the anticipation on this shot.
Yeah, you start anticipating here and then jump.
Here what it is like do a slow motion, so we have like a clear silhouette of Link and Ganon with the cool poses before the big finish.
Which, by the way, big finish.
Wow!
Yeah, I'm really proud of this transition because it's just a simple dissolve, but I actually animated like a blue reflection on the text, which is moving in the same direction that the sword is. And I think that's how you shing kind of sounds.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Super cool.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it. You happy?
Yes.
I'm happy too. Yeah. Let's see if Nintendo's happy.
Yeah.
This is the final product.
Yeah.
What do you think was the most challenging part?
Even if it's not animation, we had like a clear layout of the idea, like, oh, Ganon is a menace and Link is gonna face that menace at the end. That's like really simple story. How you explain it, how do you make it interesting is hard. More than animation, more than lighting, make everything work together towards a goal point. I think that's harder than anything, yeah.
Will we see you again in this channel?
For sure, whenever you want. Yeah.
Got it on camera!
Yes!
It's your moment to do a shameless plug. Where can people find your work, contact you, if they have any praise to give you?
If you want to find me, like, LinkedIn. It's the easiest way. Like, you find my name, you put my name on LinkedIn, you find me, and I will always answer the messages because it's easy for me. Yeah.
I think we got everything we need
Woo!
for this. We're gonna go and get some chocolate.
Yes!
He runs on chocolate.
Yeah, I don't... Yes. Every time I finish a shot, he's like, yeah, you have chocolate. I'm like, oh yeah.
So that's awesome. Let's go.
Yeah!
We're done.